Okay, finally somebody says something, like in public. This is coming from Hollywood Reporter. Barr criticizes studios over China relationships, singles out Marvel and Paramount. Nice. Here's the article. We're going to go into this. Trump's top law enforcement official said in a speech, quote, Chinese government censors don't need to say a word because Hollywood is already doing their work for them. End quote. We're going to go on with the rest. We're going to talk about it. If you want to support my work, you check out collegeofthedead.com. It's a great full-color 48-page book. We also have the prequel, which was in black and white. Very, very cool book. Shipping immediately. Really successful. Also, epicmermaids.com. We will be publishing this book in the future. It's Game of Thrones with mermaids. Full color. Incredibly well written. I work with the best people. All right, let's get back to the article. All right. Attorney General William Barr has fired another salvo at U.S. companies' relationship with China and is specifically criticizing Hollywood studios' working partnership with Beijing on film releases. Interesting how it's characterized. You know why I'm looking at this website, The Hollywood Reporter, is because Hollywood is very tied in with China. This is a very important industry publication, The Hollywood Reporter. It's been around forever. And how they cover this and talk about it, it's going to be very interesting how they phrase everything. So we'll watch out for that. In a Thursday speech aimed at outlining foreign policy toward the country, the world's second largest film market, being China, Barr used entertainment and tech sectors as examples of global kowtowing to the Beijing regime, which now has 70,000 movie screens. Interesting. 70,000 movie screens set up by exhibitors, and they're going to be opening more movie screens, more IMAX theaters, more. So obviously they're couching it, the statement here, with like, look, they've got a lot of movie screens. It's the second most important market. It's like, let's just hear what he has to say before we see how big the market is. Quote, Hollywood actors, producers, and directors pride themselves on celebrating freedom and the human spirit. And every year at the Academy Awards, Americans are lectured about how this country falls short of Hollywood's ideals. Read Barr's prepared remarks given at the Gerald R. Ford Presidential Museum in Michigan. Trump's Attorney General, Barr, added, quote, but Hollywood now regularly censors its own movies to appease the Chinese Communist Party, the world's most powerful violator of human rights. The censorship infects not only versions of movies that were released in China, but also many that are shown in American theaters to American audiences. End quote. It's very true. There's a lot of self-censoring that goes on. There's all kinds of censoring that goes on in Hollywood. It's much worse than you think it is. In his speech, Barr listed evidence of what he described as, there you go, self-censorship by noting the Paramount Pictures adaptation of Zombie Apocalypse, all right, I like Zombie Apocalypse, obviously, novel World War Z made a change to not have its patient zero be from China, and that Marvel Studios changed the Ancient One character, played by Tilda Swinton in Doctor Strange, from Tibetan to Celtic. World War Z wasn't released in theaters in China in 2013, while Doctor Strange's grossed $109 million, supposedly, in the country. There's some funny box office numbers coming out of China. We'll do a video about that another day. The Attorney General stated, quote, Chinese government censors don't need to say a word because Hollywood is doing their work for them, end quote. The Motion Picture Association, the lobbying organization representing major studios, declined to comment on the speech. Yeah, there's not a lot we can say over here. Maybe we could just go on to the next subject. That's kind of like what they sort of said but didn't say. All right. Barr's speech echoes criticism that has long been leveled at studios and companies that work with China, despite censorship concerns. How many times do you think this article was edited before it was published? Like 5 times? They're being really careful with their use of language here. Because Hollywood Reporter, too, is they're kowtowing to China. Many Hollywood films have had scenes cut or altered in order to be shown in theaters in the country, which had a box office market, again, the numbers. In 2019, that totaled $9.2 billion, while North American ticket sales were amounted to $11.4 billion. The country also has a quota on the number of foreign films released annually. They do. They have a very strict quota. They've opened it up a little bit. But just because a movie is produced in the U.S., it does not mean it's going to be distributed in China. They're very selective about the movies they will release. They do force some co-producing deals on studios as well and producers. They lock their market up very tightly. So to kowtow to them is silly because ultimately it just weakens us as creative people when we're making stuff. And they're going to control their market. They're never going to give it up unless the communist regime wasn't there anymore, which, that's beyond our control. For years, many Hollywood studios inked co-production. This is exactly what I just said. Co-production deals with China-based companies with the goal, in part, to create features that may fare better in theaters in the country and make it past local censors to nab coveted release dates. There's tremendous. We think we have corruption in the United States. The entire system is communism, and communism is corruption. It is absolutely the entire system. There are tons of levels of payoffs of things to get things done in China. But protectionism by the government and a crackdown on foreign investment curbed those deals even before the big health event. In April, Ted Cruz introduced a bill titled the Stopping Censorship, Restoring Integrity, Protecting Talkies Act that the Texas senator described as cutting off Hollywood studios from assistance they receive from the Department of Defense if those studios censor their films for screening in China. Interesting tie together. Interesting logic. I hadn't heard about that. The legislation called the Script Act was introduced in May and referred to the Committee on Homeland Security and Government Affairs. All right. On the Tilda Swinton story, this article's from 4 years ago, but it's exactly what we're talking about. Tilda Swinton cast as Tibetan to placate China, says Doctor Strange writer. From Marvel, obviously. Robert Cargill describes a depiction of the Ancient One in Benedict Cumberbatch-led superhero fantasy as a cultural landmine and unwinnable scenario. All right, now we're talking. A Marvel screenwriter has hinted the studio made the controversial decision to whitewash the Tibetan character, the Ancient One, in forthcoming superhero epic Doctor Strange to avoid upsetting China. Like, they're afraid of China. Well, they should be, because China plays really, really rough. Some fans of the Sorceress Hero, who will be portrayed by Benedict Cumberbatch, yeah, he was good, have asked why Tilda Swinton has been cast as Strange's traditionally male and Asian mystic mentor. Now Robert Cargill, in an interview for Double Toasted Podcast, has suggested Marvel had one eye on sensitivities over Tibet in the world's most populous nation. Quote, "There's no other character in Marvel history that is such a cultural landmine that is absolutely unwinnable," said Cargill, who co-wrote Doctor Strange with director Scott Derrickson and John Spahitz. "I've been reading a bunch of people talking about it, and the really frustrating thing about it is that most people who have thoughts on it haven't thought it all the way through, and they go, quote, why did they just do this? And it's like, I can tell you why. I can tell you why every single decision that involves the Ancient One is a bad one. All right, he had nothing he could possibly do." Describing Strange's magical mentor as a racist stereotype who comes from a religion of the world that is in a very weird political place, Cargill added, "He originates from Tibet, so if you acknowledge that Tibet is a place and, that it even exists, and that he's Tibetan, you risk alienating 1 billion people who think that that's bull, and the risk of the Chinese government going, hey, you know what? One of your biggest film-watching countries in the world, we're not going to show your movie because you decided to get political," even though it's the story. But they don't care about the story. They care about, like, listen, this is how this affects us. That's all we care about. Very tough. I don't like it. Cargill pointed out that if Marvel had cast a Chinese actor, the studio might have risked attracting further indignation. Really? Quote, "If you're telling me you think it's a good idea to cast a Chinese actress as a Tibetan character, you're out of your damn fool mind, and have no idea what the F you're talking about," he said. Boy, this sounds like he had like a really tough time with this. Oh, she could be Asian. She could be Japanese. She could be Indian, really. The levels of cultural sensitivity around this thing, everyone is stalking out their one particular place and not realizing that every single thing here is a losing proposition. It sounds like he's really thought it through, certainly a lot more than I have. So I'll give it to Cargill on this one. Cargill also remarked on the lack of criticism from Marvel over the decision to cast Swinton in a traditionally male role. Oh, he can't say that anymore. I'm surprised he could say that 4 years ago. Has he worked since? I don't know. I'm surprised he's got the guts to say it. It's like, that's as bad as the communist Chinese. You can't criticize that. Quote, there's not a lot of talk about, oh man, they took away the job from a guy and gave it to a woman, he said. Everyone kind of pats us on the back for that and then decides to scold us for not being Tibetan. We knew that the social justice warriors would be angry either way. Well, there you go, man. Cargill's comments cast a fascinating light on Hollywood thinking with regard to China, which they don't even in the article, they're not talking about the issue about it being a man or a woman or a woman or a man. It's like, yes, we're just going to take roles away from men, give them to women. It doesn't matter. Cargill's comments cast a fascinating light on Hollywood's thinking with regards to China, which is due to overtake North America as the world's largest box office next year. Apparently it didn't, because this is from 4 years ago. It has become common for big-budget sci-fi and comic book movies to feature Chinese stars in supporting roles. And Marvel's even experimented with adding extra local scenes and plot lines for 2013's Iron Man 3. For that, like adding extra plot lines and scenes, I personally have no problem with that. If you're going to sell it in another market and you want to feature, their location and it doesn't really affect the story or damage the character, why wouldn't you make it more localized a little bit like that? The issue, though, is not that. The issue is like the heavy-duty, absurd political stuff. Because that's just like extra. It's like, okay, so who does that hurt? Now it appears studios are willing to go to extraordinary lengths, of course, to keep local authorities happy in China and avoid the damaging withdrawal of a Chinese theatrical release in a country that only allows 34 international movies to screen in cinemas each year. And I believe that number's gone up just a little bit, but God knows where it's at right now, especially given all the circumstances. Really fascinating. I'll put links in the description so you can check these out for yourself. Give me some comments below. You know I love comments. Subscribe to the channel. Click the bell for notifications. And again, if you want to support me, you want the right thing. Go to collegeofthedead.com. Check out my full-color comic. It's in print. It's shipping absolutely right now. It looks great. We're working on the sequel, College of the Dead Spring Break. It's going to be even better than College of the Dead Graduation Day. It is possible to make a better comic every time, and that's what I'm doing. We also have coming up, which will also be great, the Mermaids comic. Make sure you subscribe to the email list for that. It's not a lot of emails. It just kind of update you on when the book's going to launch. It's 48 pages, full color. It's like Game of Thrones with mermaids. Really, really well written, really well executed. I'm really proud of the guys that I put this together with. All right, I will see you again soon with another video, and as always, you know that if I don't see you, I will miss you.